Welcome to the Extraordinary Rap Podcast. Sorry it's been a while. This episode features Pedestrian in honor of the reissue of his debut album that Extraordinary Rap is releasing. We have a very in-depth interview breaking down the album, and we got a whole bunch of bonus material too at patreon.com/extraordinaryrap. There'll also be 2 bonus episodes there because I'm going to do a new music rundown, including new releases by Andrew Mbaruk, Cavalier, Shabazz Palaces, Alpha, Exhibit, Serengeti, and more. Anyway, Pedestrian is an elusive artist, basically refuses to pose for press photos. He made it very difficult for me to publicize this album because he does not jump through the hoops that you need to have a music career. Refuses to do a music video, refuses to even let me put the fucking URL in the promo images I'm posting. So he's like the anti-superstar. Fittingly enough, he's the one that coined the term anticon for the collective, which gave rise to the initial success of his cohorts, Dose 1, Soul, Y, etc. We talk a little bit about anticon and some of his personal life in the bonus materials. This main episode focuses almost exclusively on the album itself, Un-Indian Songs Volume 1, which we are releasing on cassette. We only made 103 copies. It is a remastered and expanded version of the original album. The album is a 100% benefit to illegal immigrants crossing the southern border, and the digital comes out on all platforms on May 1st. The album was not previously available on digital platforms aside from like YouTube bootlegs. So happy to get that out there. The cassette also comes with a zine, a brand new booklet that Pedestrian has put together, including lyrics, photographs, and other writings. So here he is, James Brandon Best, aka Pedestrian.
And so accordingly, the subject of this evening is Death's Black Train is coming.
So it begins, the subject of this evening is Death's Black Train is coming. And that's the precise line of the Reverend J.M. Gates record, Death's Black Train is Coming, what were called sermonettes in the 20s and 30s. Short sermons with songs, fit for 78. So very brief. But Reverend J.M. Gates from Atlanta, he had a big church in Atlanta, and he recorded pretty much the first ones that blew up, these sermonettes. So what I'm doing there with that accent is Reverend J.M. Gates. Death's Black Train is coming, and it may be here tonight. I think he said that, and then the rest of it I added, in the same vein. The train whistles in the register of the clouds, the steam of your name. That would have not been a J.M. Gates thing to say. And so you also notice I started to switch the accents, like right after that. May be here tonight. Then I go back to it. So that begins I thought that was that was the first sermon I did out of many now. And I thought it was important to suggest from the very jump that what I was doing was not some form of minstrelsy. I was actually I'm actually from the South and grew up in the church, and my sister, who raised me, was a pastor for 20-something years. And so the sermons are like a natural form for me. And that also, I wanted to suggest the overlapping qualities of what are considered black and white accents in the South. Because a lot of people outside of the South don't recognize how congruous they can be.
Yeah.
But they can also be like very identifiably different and suggest in that difference, you know, all forms of inequality and racial terror and all that. So it was a point for me to go back and forth constantly between all kinds of accents. So like a linguist who maybe, or an accent coach who knows Southern accents would look at that and just like want to like bang their heads against the wall because it makes no sense.
Right.
But it makes sense to me.
Missing letters, a postcard rack. Speaking to the medium, crystal ball card table in a gypsy shack. Uplifted the breath and slid the phrase under
These two themes of time and light, they recur throughout. And that's like the easiest like poet thing to do, that to maneuver these broad ass themes. But the job of the poet then, or the rapper or the singer, is to isolate these themes and then to expound upon them through specifics of everyday life, through the street corners on which they reside, you know, through the detritus of their lives, their pasts, their mistakes, their regrets, their ambitions, their present, the in-betweenness of it all. Time and light are just these ways of approaching it. But you have to approach it from this specific, between the tiny interactions and the encounters of the everyday. And so it starts out, you know, you don't know what time it is. You don't know what time it is. So it's Flavor Flav from this PE documentary from '88. I think it was I forget what the documentary was called. You don't know what time it is. So we're already stretching our time. And then we reuse the similar interaction Flav is having in the documentary with this old white lady on the street who has no idea who she's talking to. And which is what Flav is saying to her. She's like a nice old lady, but she's just like confused as to what's going on. It's just like camera crew and Flav rocking his clock and being like, yeah, you don't know what time it is. Profound in its its simpleness. But so we start with that, and then it goes into me and Jeff. I'm just gonna say Jeff from now on. We did like a Run DMC back and forth thing.
Oh, I didn't realize I was Jeff there.
Yeah, Jeff's doing it back and forth with me.
Yeah.
And he was better at that than me because he understood like the one by one back and forth. Da, 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 da. So that's his musicality. But so I wrote the lyrics and shit. And so that whole thing is simple. It's about light, which becomes a theme again over and over in this song as elsewhere. But yeah, Motel Beacon breaking over open road, broken lights, missing letters, a postcard whack, speaking to the dead, a medium cheap gold, crystal ball card table in a gypsy shack. But so that also introduces a theme that is the idea of speaking to the dead is the practice that we're pursuing here. Through talk about death and time and loss and light and those things. We're speaking to the dead. It's like a ritual invocation, this speaking to the dead. But also like humble about it. A medium in cheap gold, crystal ball, card table in a gypsy shack. Like we're not fucking prophets. We're not king's son. We don't have the knowledge and the mathematics. We don't have any fucking God. We have no wisdom. It's just about the pursuit. And so the last part of this goes, love lifted the breath and slid a phrase under it. Hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah.
I try to keep the policy simple. Exactly 12.7% of what I see, I then sing or rap.
A strange impulse to be so, but I grew up on blowed tapes and Bergman flicks, subducting weeks in a torrent of dollar books and Roxy matinees. So it can only make sense that I'm looking for a light to live between sleep.
Now the jam is lit.
It introduces like the broader project without me intending to do so. It's like in retrospect, clearly this is what I'm thinking. So I ground my aesthetics like from the jump. I say besides the fact that I already had in terms of sermons and I've run UC and the gospel stuff and Nas, and then I go a strange impulse to be sure. That is, to rap 12.7% of what you see. Mm-hmm. A strange impulse to be sure, but I grew up on blowed tapes and Bergman flicks, subducting weeks in the torrent of dollar books and Roxy matinees. So it can only make sense that I'm looking for a light to live between sleep. This jam is lit. This jam is lit. So that's me discussing I'm not trying to be pretentious by bringing up Bergman flicks. Like, I actually watched every single Ingmar Bergman flick. I'm obsessed like that. I did that as a fucking dropout, like by myself. Like, I had like this dope video store in New Haven, Connecticut when I did this, at Mike's, where you could get 10 videos for $10 for 10 days, old stuff. And so I would go dutifully every 3 weeks and watch these Bergman flicks. But so anyways, I was just saying, like, I grew up in the tradition of Good Life and Project Blowed. Like, that was like the profound thing that shook my core. And like, it struck me in terms of the suggestion of possibilities and affirmation of otherness, and also not a rebuke of hip-hop in its various forms. Like, that was not a point of the Good Life and Blowed. It was never about purifying. It was always about accepting and affirming and expanding at every turn as an impossible but compulsory effort. It was like, I just want to say it clear, in subducting weeks in the torrent of dollar books and Roxy matinees. I was, because in the Bay then, there were dollar books on every other fucking lawn. There were fucking actually bookstores that were used. They all had their dollar book carts out front. And that was just like, that was like an education, That was a sentimental education before I could go to college, before even I could go to community college. Like, that's why I learned things from front lawns and, pilfered fucking dollar books. And Roxy matinees. Roxy was a cinema in the Mission, about 16th and Mission. They had matinees. They were like $5 for a double feature. And because my schedule was usually loose, because of temping and shitty jobs, I would just go there and like feel the peace and just watch double features and eat a burrito from next door. And these were like spaces for me in which I could explore things. And so it can only make sense that I'm looking for a light. And these are the various ways I looked for light. To live between sleep. This jam is lit, which was Ice-T from the Color soundtrack. And so then it goes on, but won't dwell with it. It just goes on exploring different ways in which light works in the world. Yeah, and it concludes with a similar, affirmation of rap as a way to suck from the heavens, one particle of gas at a time, and attempt to exhale these things that you've absorbed.
Who taught all you guys that you didn't have to rhyme to rap?
It's funny. I mean, I think most people would say De La, Keith first, but De La more like consistently and like obviously, because they were more predictable in patterns and keeping the syntax and cadence and shit.
W.G. Savall died in the middle of this song, new novel and all. Like King the Pendra last June in the fall, drowned in a coma and gone by morning. Some number of self-shattering Palestinians shuttered themselves in Jerusalem. A Vietnam veteran hospital team minds a game with phantom lens, cause hit head on or a thrown in bed. People pass piece by piece by piece by piece by piece by piece.
the idea is simply that, people die, people pass, piece by piece by piece. But the thing is, like, okay, what are the pieces of that passing exactly? Like, how did that transpire for the folks in this moment? So W.G. Sebald, this great novelist and historian of Germany and Austria during World War II and after, he had passed while I was writing the song, while we were recording it. And so I just put him at the beginning because he's just a fascinating dude. And then King Dipendra last June in Nepal, crowned in a coma and gone by morning. So King Dipendra of Nepal had been killed by his cousin in a palace coup, and so he was crowned in a coma and then gone the next morning because he was wounded by his cousin's assassination attempt. And so that's an example in which people pass piece by piece by piece. It's not as simple as people ceasing to exist. It happens piece by piece. And so it goes on to suggest different ways that people pass piece by piece. Number of self-shattering Palestinians sharded themselves in Jerusalem. Talking about suicide bombers, last-ditch efforts to insist on the Palestinian right to exist in East Jerusalem. And a Vietnam veteran hospital team mimes a game with phantom limbs because people pass piece by piece. And then that's a Gift of Gab sample from Shadow's Midnight B-side. And then, so the next shit will be Yoni Y singing a stanza about this sculpture that was made in memorial of this person, this unhoused person who had passed beneath the freeway just down the street from me on Grand Ave in Lake Merritt, Maryland.
A string of shopping carts arced, a strip mall headstone under an overpass in memory of one who froze a week before, and in the highway swish of a midday rain, glimmering like the thin bones of stained glass saints.
Yeah, the photos and the original art of the actual shopping carts art. There was just an item in the back of the Oakland Tribune. I barely added much poetry to it. I just try to dignify the work of the memorialists and the person that they were giving posthumous cover to, and thinking about the ways in which the stained glass saints of our time, the light that shines through them and from them, may be reflected in like the wet glitter off of the bones of shopping carts. So this last verse, and I think we should skip through, but I think this is the one that probably makes things more clear, at least to me. But it begins with this line. It's from a couple lines I cut up a little bit. From Elder I.D. Beck, from an Alan Lomax field recording from an old Kentucky regular Baptist church service in maybe 55. But the old regular Baptists didn't have like a pastor per se, or a particular reverend, so they were each able to speak up for themselves within the service. But so elder just meant you're just like an older person in the church. It's not an official title. And what he said was, in the larger version, I don't know if I'm going to be able to preach about these things. Lord, I'm just a humble man sitting here. I don't know. I mean, dude's styling his ass off. Like this improbable cat. Like, why would he style so hard? I just think it's embedded in each of us, or at least amongst us, to style your ass off, to fucking sing out of key and screech in fucking double and triple time, just to sing about how humble you are. I mean, that's beautiful. So that's why I sampled him. And then what follows immediately is a return to Flavor Flav talking about blindness and knowing what time it is. And he says, right after the earlier part, he says, we usually hear, you're blind, baby. You're blind to the facts of who you are. And then I said, and who you are in the molecular American sense, is a dust extra in an empire's ruin rehearsal, and to cover one's eyes from oneself is inevitable. So the question is, like, how clearly can we see ourselves, even if we're people in pursuit of light? How clearly can we see ourselves? And if we're going to begin to attempt that process, then we first need to recognize that we are simply fucking dust motes in a dying light of a fucking empire in the decrepit stage of late capitalism. And that's just a fact you cannot get out of. Otherwise, you're blind, baby.
Still paper rains on the dry high plains while I've been sipping my tongue in the tough shell of his name. Picture threaded fingers straining broken bread, dual brainers burn in the bend of
They still pray for rains on the dry high plains, which was straight up like a headline I ripped off from the Times of the SF Chronicle. While I've been chipping my tongue with the tough shell of his name, like I can't really say God anymore, but I can't disavow like the need for rain and the need for collective practice in summoning it, you know, like no disrespect at all for that. And then so I describe praying. So then I say, this shit makes me laugh, but no one else ever really cared for it or mentioned it. But this is like me like doing my film studies on VHS and like foreign stuff. If black and white stuff, they would mostly just have like the subtitles would also be in white. So the white of the subtitles wash in sunlight. So if it's a daylit scene, you can't read the goddamn subtitles at all. They're washed in the sunlight, sucking the date stamp and the first words with it under the wide lens of a new day. So if a scene switches to like, you know, Stockholm, 1933, like you can't even read that at all. So it's just a new day without even knowing where you are or what the first words are people speak because they're still under the fucking sunlight. And then it goes, I'm referring directly to my sister and just situating myself in the course of this process. I'm just saying, it's very, very straightforward. Say, I'm 24, still the little brother of a reverend, writing the bars out, washing them away, lying flat, floating phrases skyward. It's just like being in bed and just thinking of lines and trying to cut them into something. And once in a while, even falling asleep smiling, which I think is just like the only like representation of contentment that makes me comfortable. Falling asleep smiling. Not like waking up smiling, like thinking the day is going to be song and dance. No, falling asleep smiling, that's like a day. Mm-hmm. And then the conclusion is, but wake up as if spilled out of a midday matinee, first eyes clutching for dark. You know, after 4 hours in the old matinee at the Roxy, you're like blind again the second you walk outside. You saw so much. You were able to see in a different way. Then you're blind again. And then I take coffee and turn to 825 in the New York Times, the op-eds, where the letters begin. Editor, what short memories we have, which was an actual line from a letter to the editor. It was like definitely like an old man, like bitching about some editorial. So it's suggesting, you know, the flimsiness of history.
And the scene I choirs like, look,
Hallelujah! Gotta pick it in the spirit. Pick it now. You gotta pick it when the spirit says, yeah.
And the song concludes, a seeing eyes choir. Look, hallelujah. And so the idea was like, there's a couple of blind folks and they're surrounded, instead of by seeing eye dogs, by a choir. The seeing eye choir. And so they don't describe, you know, bus benches in your way, or what the monumental architecture of an Eli Broad looks like. Instead, they say, hallelujah. It's like, this is going to be our method, to be like a seeing eye choir, to not be judgy, not to worship any particular God, but to just like look in wonderment.
Who's Hosanna?
Hosanna and hallelujah are interchangeable.
Wow. it's just a word of like
instant of praise.
Like
and wonder.
heck yeah, heavens yes.
Ecstatic, yes.
Okay.
And then it goes, if the Spirit says pick it, you gotta pick it. Oh Lord. If the Spirit says pick it, you gotta pick it. So it's suggesting that there is like, the Spirit does not collaborate in passivity.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit collaborates in resistance and knowing anew the things that we thought were solid.
Yo, I'm just with the mix plus ice on the mic, passing out in my Nikes dipped in rehab white. Regrets bum rush when the quiet it abides and departs with the dark for the dawn dipping light. I'm like, give me a lie, at least one I can believe in a world so fragile. You gotta say please, like it's some kind of advice. Anytime that you leave, and leave she did before I got light and a star it fell.
Yeah, so ice on the mic is funny. It really just, it sounds like it happened, like in the 15 minutes it did. It's like hella sloppy. This was an attempt to try to corral the energy of like just being kind of live and freestyle. And I think what I was thinking of was, I think it was Money at the Bank, the Cool G Rap song with Lord Professor produced it. Like there was like a scene at the end of that song where like the mic just became in the middle of the room and Cool G Rap just does his verse. Like what you would call freestyle in their day, in their sensibility.
So come one or two, step from a few, doubles or couples, and I quit with one chicken. Boy, you can't handle it, none or any.
And so we just did like a sloppy version of that because I had just written that song like right before he came over, just on my dictaphone, like lying at a time. So I barely remembered it, which you could tell. That was a Just Ice line, the first one. I'm just with the mix plus ice on the mic. I just thought that was a cool ass fucking way to, like I'm just with the mix, like I'm equitable, but I'm ice on the mic though. The second line, that was a reference to Seagram. He had a song called Passing Out in My Nikes. So I changed it to Passing Out in My Nikes dipped in rehab white. I was thinking, this is how, if I'm gonna do rehab, I'm gonna still wear like white Nikes though. If that's how I gotta do it. It's like some fatalistic shit. But and then like the lines are just about like this woman leaving the house and then my dad dying, just put it like casual. That's why God moved on the water and the dead of the light, because my father too was of shadow comprised. That's why dead mark a tongue with the traces of lies. It's just all about like tags being crossed off and dad dying and this person you cared about leaving your house in the morning and what that was like for her. And then that pigeon smashed out front curbside, that's again every morning when you wake outside. It don't stop, y'all. So there was this one pigeon that was like in front of my fucking curb whenever I walked outside to go to school or work. I had to like walk over this fucking pigeon. It was like it had died again every single goddamn morning. And it don't stop, y'all. It's all the wants, y'all. The phone calls fade over time, y'all. That's just about it, friends. Losing your fucking number.
California by airplane window, tracked house, and like rows of teeth, the nervous grin of the idle frontier, a chain frontier, like the suburbs studded, or like a two-lane highway for blocks of clothes. On the first floor of the Wells Fargo, answer phone to colored blacking behind the glass before Japanese men with the same gray suits with kids and cameras, a flash of effect walking by.
So the lifelong liquidation sale, I guess, was my attempt to like be less vague than other songwriters may have been in discussing the meaning of the resilient Native American presence in the United States, on which we are tourists in a way, or involuntary visitors. And so just to think about it specifically, like what does California actually mean? So that's why the subtitle is 1850 to 1950. I'm thinking about statehood for California, obviously, with 1850. And so the first line is, California, there's no turning back from the cabinet marked dead deals. So the historian Patricia Limerick once described the history of the West as a history of real estate. And she was describing the move, which of course involved various forms of genocide and land and mineral extrapolation and forced conversion and rape and Indian schools. Everyone knows this history, but do we actually? So that was the question: like, how can we really look at the world as it is, and always keep in mind and listen to the voices of those who speak for the ones who were displaced and attempted to be eradicated? How do we sit here and hear that and decline it? So one way I focused on, as I always do as a former very shitty tagger, the metaphor of the tag always appears to me, because the tag tells tales that the uninitiated cannot read. They're Gnostic in that way. And they literally cannot read them in terms of the actual writing, whether it's Old English or Wild Style. They also don't know the names of those involved. The R.I.P. Loco Snoopies, you know what I'm saying? And they don't know the neighborhoods they're referring to. They don't know the histories of these neighborhoods and the conflicts and the loyalties. And so I took that as a metaphor to talk about the ways in which Native American names persist, even in the face of eradication in the places we're born. And by we, I mean all of us, not just white people, but all of us were born under the signs of these names, of these worlds that still exist despite all odds, but against all odds. So I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia, and Norfolk, Virginia, and Chula Vista, California, which is right by the border. And so the histories of these names are ever present. And so I was specifically here talking about the Bay because that's where I was, thinking about the financial district where I temped off and on so I could go to school and work another job and do this music shit. So that's why I turned to the imagery of the kind of real estate cabinet, the investor portfolio of dead deals. So I'm thinking of the history of real estate and of discarded and tradered treaties. Mm-hmm. So this is like a kind of defamiliarizing technique in poetry to, abstract it from the moment of bloody murder into like a kind of mythic office of in a real estate complex where fates are decided by strokes of pen, and they're so banal as to be read over by assistants and then checked off upon and signed by the boss, and then that's our world. Then I sampled a line from a David Berman poem. The late great David Berman was a poet and singer from this band called Silver Jews. This I went to a reading of his at I think it was Mills College in Oakland, or it might have been SF State in the city. But I recorded it with like a handheld like disc recorder thing. And he just says, it's very simple. It's a very simple line, but I just love it. He says, "The rain falls on the United States as the rain wonders what is the United States." So that was it was a way to like approach the idea of first beginnings. Like, let's go back to the very moments of this rupture, of this break in time and space in which colonizers and settler economies and socialities and politics and religions were able to flourish and take over like transplanted predators.
What's 1950?
It's subtitled 1850 to 1950. 1950 marks the inauguration of what was referred to as the Indian Relocation Program, which was a federal program supposedly intended to relieve reservations of their, fifth world qualities of life. Lack of water, lack of resources, lack of schooling. And we're talking about tribes who had been shunted into the most inhospitable land in North America, short of the Arctic. and they were beset by racist violence and corrupt collaborators within the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs. I had Soul do the line at the end, "This is fresh from 1850, you suckers," which was a KRS thing he would do, like announcing like his new shit. But I was like, okay, just situated back then though, because it's still fresh. 1850 is still fresh every fucking day under every other street name in California and everywhere in this crooked country.
Oh, silent bed, I'm singing of still to mid the steel deputies to breathe in. Bloom in its body, so Prince mortal blue. Beneath the hospital television beaming. Between them theme songs keening. It's grave laughter ringing. It's meaning, hand on the bleaching. Canvas of the past and face slackens. The labors of its last birth. The blinding sheets all seem soon enough. At the forehead.
Silent Bed. Yoni Y and Andrew Broder from Fog were doing a project called Honey's Basement, and they had asked me to like read poems before the shows. They were premiering Honey's Basement for the first time in 3 shows in Oakland and SF. They just wanted to like flip it up rather than have like an opener, like an opening band or whatever. So they asked me to read poetry. I'd been thinking about this song, like trying to do a song about death, like to confront death head on. As a little brother of a reverend, sermons made more sense to me than going up and reading poetry at a club. Because to me, sermons were rap. And, you control the mic as a preacher or as a rapper. Because I was listening to a lot of sermons at that time too, and I still do, despite my lack of belief. My line was always like, why do the Christians get the good fucking preaching? We all deserve good preaching. Fuck your faith. We all deserve it. So I started to research this song, thinking about like, how do you do a death song? Because what is more important than a death song? And if you're a rap head, then you know death songs already. But I wanted to tap into the tradition, so I've been doing research, and I decided to put them all together. Like, okay, I can preach. Fuck it, why not? Like, I'm equipped. I'm trained in this world. But I had to do my, wandering around stoned in the library at Cal, Berkeley, or at the Oakland Public Library. And so I did. I just spent days and days just rifling through books, looking up old traditions of death songs. And so O Silent Bed, the title is from a 17th century British pamphlet. It was the beat was done by Bran alias. Yeah, so one of the refrains we use is from Freestyle Fellowship, from the first record, To Whom It May Concern, by Jay Sumbi. He says, "This illusion is grim," but I had Bran cut it up a little bit. We take off like the beginning of this, so it sounds more like this illusion is grim. So, death talk. And there are a lot of references in it. There's one from Ewan McCall, Charles Parker, and their series from the BBC from the late 60s, where there's one called The Body Blow. It was about young people growing up in, what are they called? Human, like bubbles, they were human bubbles. So people had I think maybe they had TB or something. They couldn't be infected, so they had to live inside. So they couldn't be outside of the bubble. So between them steel deputies and breathe in. That was a line from Ewan McCall, who was a communist folk singer and theater director and writer. So O Silent Bed was, I think, me just trying to participate in this long deep tradition of songs about death, wherein you face the things that you can't in everyday life. You can't talk about these kinds of things. It's not funny, and it's hard to deal with if you're, this is not like a lunchtime conversation with your moms. This is something you put in songs because it's difficult to deal with. And so I just went head on towards death, and there's no reason for a preacher except to explain things like death and to poeticize and to be there to facilitate the whole process. And so I did my research. I spent 6 months researching the song. If you're gonna go to that dark place, then you have to earn it. And so I tried to put in my sweat equity for this motherfucker and really haunted libraries, and I tried to respect the subject.
Somebody's father died. Catch a quarter rolling on inside. Got a bum memory, but got these raps with their dad's date stamps and friends attached. Somebody's father died. Catch a quarter rolling on inside. Got a bum memory, but got these raps with their dad's date stamps and friends attached. The soiled suit, somebody's father dives to catch a quarter rolling on inside. Nah.
So in the opening lines, I'm trying to be optimistic. But what I'm doing also is articulating what it means to be a person in the context of the marketplace. So the opening lines, which were sang by Yoni Y, the sun opens at an all-time high today, centers a person in the context of living in a market-based world. And in the marketplace, we are but bits of light to trade. And so we're turning to the theme of how does one exist with some semblance of light, some flash, some spark, some split, given the givens. And so, there is a feeling there, I think, and you can hear there's a refrain of sighs. I'm audibly yawning and sighing on it, which is something I do constantly because I'm just a tired man and also just bored, and it's just how it is. And so I recorded it that's real. But so as we go through it, there's a constant kind of meditation on what it means to be born within money or without. And so we're talking about that. And so, the first lines are very simple, poet on his fucking travels kind of thing. On my way here, I saw a kite caught in a power line. I say caught, but I like to think perched for what it's worth. And then I say a line of how bad this kind of writing is. Sometimes I'm so close to a phrase like blueprint of the soul, I'm going to let the whole goddamn poem go. And then I say, this is important to me. Maybe my old friend said it best. I'm talking about Tim Holland, Soul. He had a line, just in our jokey little rap group called Babylonians. He had a line said, we got struck by lightning and it stuck in our chest. And I was like, okay, despite all the boredom and booze and loneliness and disappointment of whatever, if you get struck by lightning, you cannot let it go. And that's why we do this. That's why these verses come unaccompanied sometimes and without thought. You get struck by lightning and that's it. You're done. And so you just do this. And so the refrain that follows is a line I took from a short story in McSweeney's. I can't remember the author, it's been so long, but she was responding to 9/11. And so she was talking about what it meant to be a witness to the collapse of the Twin Towers in that moment. And she said, why do we say we are bored to tears? What are we mourning? And I wish I could take it out, because I sound so fucking corny, like I'm so like out of key and shit, like amelodic as ever, you know. But that was like a real ass line, so you know, respect whoever said it. And then so I continued the theme in the next stanza. In the dead of the day, I turned 10. So I turned 10 on October 19th, 1987, which is when the black market crash of 87 happened that occasioned the recession that followed it. And, you know, there was like the usual image of stockbrokers jumping from windows. So I was I was likening that to what happened during 9/11, when folks jumped from the sky, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I said, the Dow went black and brokers fell from the sky into geometrical piles of pinstripes. And so then I say, about a month before I turned 24, so that'd be 9/11, cabs with the back seats knocked out took bodies to an old Brooks Brothers they had converted into a new morgue, which was a detail about folks dealing with the casualties of 9/11. It's just like these are the horizon lines, these are the backdrops in which we live. And so that wasn't what the song was about, these instances of capitalist collapse. It's more about like how do you live within it. And so then it goes to some like aspirational lines because the beat's so pretty. I just wanted to try to be nice. I try to be nice with it. So, you know, I just said simple things like I want to live longer than your average Black Panther. And, you know, the expiration date of active Black Panthers in the period in which they were active, I'll say 66 and 72, was very short due to cops and then, you know, federal motherfuckers. And so that was just me saying, like, maybe I don't want to, like, end up in prison like my communist forebears. Maybe there are things that exist outside of me that are so broad and wide. The stock market collapses and the 9/11s, which recur over and over. Let's not center 9/11 as the only catastrophe. We're living within one right now, or two or three. Mm-hmm. But it's like an exertion of like some sense of like maybe I do want to live a little bit. Like maybe I'm not going to die when I'm 30. Maybe I don't have to go to prison. So I want to live longer than your average Black Panther. I want to watch the gray trickle paint my beard, which has happened. I want to pen a novel entitled The Held Sigh, which of course I ain't no fucking novelist, man. I sigh too much. I yawn too much, man. I ain't no fucking nervous novelist. Like I'm more into one-line ice pricks in your fucking neck. I want to quit writing and move to Arcosante, which was an intentional community in Arizona. And then I say, you know, at last, after it's all done, even sink in the same laugh lines I cut. You know, I'm thinking about like, I was thinking about my partner at that point, who later became my wife, and it still is. It's like, because my game ain't like, I ain't a pretty boy. I'm not a catch, but I make a chick laugh, and I make my chick laugh. And that's my game, and shit, it works. Cool. Like fuck your jewels. Like it ends. I'm still thinking about what it means to grow up in a market economy, and what it means to grow up in a world in which your father is defined by their income. And my father, he went to prison a few times for embezzlement. He was a criminal, and I think being a criminal in this system is largely, if not forgivable, justified. This is a system in which, as Huey P. Newton described it as illegitimate capitalism thrives. And so, I don't hate on anybody who does what they have to do. Like, this is the world we're born into. But so I'm just thinking about my dad who, I rebuked, and I didn't see him for the last 8-9 years of his life. Because I was just like, fuck you, man. Like, I ain't fucking with you. But I said in this, he had just died, I think maybe a year or two before. I said, in a soiled suit, somebody's father dives to catch a quarter rolling on its side. And that's how desperate the men were of my generation, the fathers were, to catch that quarter. They would soil everything else about them, and in the pursuit, lose their soul.
So get your cell phone, the ICC posse on the line, let's end this nonsense. You can still hear the ghost of Nixon howling the phone taps of the Oval Office, and in the transcripts now unfolding, blacked out passages form out of nothing.
Politicians protect the interest. You're not it, one in a mass statistic. Life means nothing without consumption. Look at the third world.
Arrest the President, it was a song we did to make each other laugh in a time of, the war on terror. This was George W. Bush era. We were doing it in the spirit of self-destruction, and we were all in the same gang. But it was also dead serious, too. At that time, I was especially a student of radical music from the 60s and 70s. There was like a tendency towards sloganeering that was a part of that, which was just, it's comical in retrospect. So we kept that in mind, but we were still like pursuing that instinct, that tradition. But I say, you can still hear the ghost of Nixon howling the phone taps of the Oval Office. So I sampled Henry Kissinger and Nixon's like phone calls. And so you hear in the background, if you're listening on headphones, you can hear Nixon go, "Hello, Henry?" And then I go, and then the transcripts now unfolding, blacked out passages form out of nothing. So I'm talking about, how we understand history and how proscribed it is and how taken away from us it is. So then there's like the end of the first verse where we're all going back and forth. "Don't believe me, ask Kennedy." And then we sample Pat Robertson, the evangelist, talking about the Kennedy curse. Then we go on. What can you expect? Enron execs, think tank vets, Iran-Contra convicts, talking about former Enron execs trading, Iran-Contra convicts, John D. Negroponte, Condoleezza Rice at the Chevron desk. She was a Chevron exec before she became Secretary of State. A coup in Venezuela, Otto Reich directs. Otto Reich was the head of Latin American affairs for the Secretary of State. And he was also an Iran-Contra vet. So we're talking about people who are war criminals, have serious history, and guiding death squads in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. And these people have blood on their hands, and that's how they have power. And then the TIPS program, how many phones fixed? Talking about Tom Ridge, who was the director of Homeland Security at that moment, et cetera, et cetera. And then I sampled Bobby Seale, who was one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, along with David Hilliard, the meeting. He says, the long arm of fascist surveillance reaching from the 60s into the present. And he laughs. He laughs because that's how regularized this kind of thing was.
The history channel repeats itself at 2 and 10 on the dot. A big band on the police horse and bulls off to board a billboard. Where the sun sets dark low behind the Wells Fargo wagon logo. Itself an older anachronism with the now-long-disbanded rolled out.
So, History Channel, this was like my very poor attempt at singing. But again, this was a part of my deep connection with protest songs. And so I had my man George, Telephone Jim Jesus, play banjo, which he had never played before. Yeah, the History Channel repeats itself at 2 and 10 on the dot, which is literally true. The History Channel would just repeat programming twice a day. So I connected it to like my life at that time, which was occasionally temping at Wells Fargo, where there was a wagon behind glass. And I wrote about it elsewhere too in Lifelong Liquidation Sale. Wells Fargo, wagon logo. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about the ways in which history imprints itself on the present and is recurring. So the idea, the cliche is that history repeats itself. Nah, history is redundant. We repeat ourselves underneath the glare of television playing the History Channel.
Night falls on the sell-by gate, and the last visible star beyond the billboards lands in the Oakland airport. A leftover northerly flaps a logo in time for Broadway storefront. It's unexplained, new name in as many same place years. When my bed pop is halved by one, and I'm still receiving the past.
So yeah, field reports from the financial district. This was really just me temping while I was going to community college at Laney in Oakland. During the Enron motivated shortage of electricity in California, they withheld fuel in order to extort higher prices. What it meant, even if you worked at a bank, like I worked at the front desk at Wells Fargo. Straight up, your office would just go black for an hour or two. And so I took it as I felt very, very apart from it all. You know, I was wearing my Goodwill outfit, my Goodwill suit. And then I was just sitting there in the fucking dark, answering phones. It was absurd. I felt like I was like an anthropologist in a distant world. That's why it's called Field Reports from the Financial District. Yeah, I just felt like an outsider, and I was just trying to transcribe the weirdness of it all. And it was very, very strange. Talking about candlelight and stockbrokers. On a Tuesday afternoon, it's all dark because Enron is extorting California. This is how strange the system is.
Laugh track in the can that they laugh about like a vibes of bonds out of failed sitcom. Cold laughing, lapis in my private dark. If dark don't rhyme, we'll make it black. I'll hold a face the way a pane of glass when the store holds those and cars that pass. Toss and turn till my skin falls away and folds holding my young face flat. Keep a keg of sleeping pills on tap and do the dance till my shit collapse.
So I've experienced severe insomnia for my entire life, and I first realized it when I was 5 or something. And Jonah and I have talked about this in the past couple of days, but I was institutionalized just a few months ago because of severe insomnia, sleep deprivation. It led to a psychotic break, so I ended up in the psych ward. 5150 was what he called in California, involuntary 72-hour psych hold. But it's just something that I'd always, without the benefit of a therapist or any supervision whatsoever, it's just something I always dealt with myself. And so I made a damn song about it. And this was my first single, and straight up the 5th song I ever recorded by myself. So Jeff did the beat. It was a meters loop. I had Jeff loop it up for me. Then he added a bunch of shit too, little horn stabs or whatever. We started out where he interrupts me. I can't remember what I'm saying. It's 5 days a week I wake up stuck and fall back asleep where I started from. And then Jeff interrupts me. He's yo man, get that shit you was doing the other week ago. And that's that's Jeff and I doing Just Ice and KRS. You know,
Going way back.
Yeah, going way back. Yeah. So then I start out again talking about my parents or lack thereof, you know. And I'm just saying, lead a man to the altar, never make him kneel. I lead him to the club, remind him how to feel. Son of a one-time new wage healer. I'm talking about my mom. You know, she had like her casual dalliances with every religion on earth. A one-time new wage healer and a door-to-door book up a dead dealer. I'm talking about my dad who was like a consummate con man. So the idea was, you know, these old songs from the, I would say, late 60s to mid 70s. They were based on dances, like funk songs, specifically, like the Funky Penguin. And they had instructions in the song, like how to do the dance. So Jeff, he does the instructions. Uncross your arms. Now cross your legs. Now turn on your side, and now the other side, and uncross your arms, and uncross your legs. There's nothing more pointless than a pile of crosses. So I just added like some
Yeah, that's a line I was pondering.
anti-Christian shit just because it was funny to me. But then the last line of this verse goes, what can it mean when the walls read R.I.P. dream? Nervous, breakdown. But that was actually, it sounds like maybe them just like doing like a little joke about, you know, not being able to dream because of profound sleeplessness. But nah, there was this graph artist named Mike Dream. But he was killed pointlessly a few years before this record. And so there was still a bunch of R.I.P. Dream murals up, you know, out of respect and homage to him. So that's why I say that. So it ends, show me my discography and I'll sign the apology. And, you know, I'm talking about the things that pour into your head in the blackness of you in bed and trying to find sleep. And all the mortality, all the regrets, all the mistakes, all the X's, those things trickle into your fucking head. So tear me down, then build me again in a world with less to lose in the end. It's like a desperate fucking call. And then it concludes more or less, you might call it some type of faith withdrawal as fadeaway therapy happens to evolve. Watching headlights break up bits of peeling paint on a borrowed wall. I mean, that's about nightmares around rent. And you're watching your shitty wall in your garbage ass apartment in Oakland peel off, and you're just sitting there and you're wondering if you're even going to be able to pay rent tomorrow or next week. And it keeps you up even longer. Me and a full-time 2-plot fault line, now that's a thought that's at the spine of a pillow. Poet's wife, where though? Waiting outside in the line of tomorrows, tying the nights with the sheets from the window, trying to break out the blanketed barrel. Ain't no way to find a way to wake up. These days I make up as I go along, etc., etc. But it's really just about, like, dear God, I know you're not there, but dear God, give me some sleep. Incognito Ergo Sum comes from this, originates from this Just Ice line from 86, 87, I forget which song. And he says, Cognito Ergo Sum. And he was referring to cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. But he said cognito, which struck me as like, yo, that's like a mission statement for me. Like my whole style, like. So I sampled him elsewhere in the song with the N sound. So then it said, incognito ergo sum, hidden, therefore I am. You know, that struck me as Yeah, that spoke to me. A part of like the way I approached the whole thing was like, okay, it was less about like me, like, recognize me. I'm this rapper. You all have to admire or despise. For me, that was never it. I just really wanted to like contribute to this thing that nourished me, that gave me life, and that I love still, no less than I did 30 years ago, when it found me. So one of the ways that I decided that I could contribute was to like not make it about me. And so lowercase pedestrian, which is a rap name I never said on a single goddamn song. I've never done a single verse, a single bar where I diss another rapper or like the state of hip hop and how it's become. It's only about love. And, love can be fucking difficult and messy and hard to hear sometimes, but that was like my thing. Like I would never, ever, assert myself in that way or diminish other people who are part of this culture.
Anxious by now. 6 weeks till I've translated this sober song summer to a single phrase. Falling through as in a mirror with the ledge or the title of a volume of my collected regrets. Nothing punctuates let down.
I think it's a funny like love song because I don't say a single word about this person I'm thinking of. She was this girl that I just had like a crazy crush on from Laney Community College. Yeah, so the beginning of Jane 2, it's a record, Levert, gospel group in the family. So I just inserted myself on top of them. Like, where you been? Da, 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 da. I just added myself on top of them, like pretending that we were chatting. And then it's a love song, but it's clear that it's just about me. It's not about her. I didn't say a single word about her. It's just about like a fleeting affection.
I mean, you called her greedy.
I didn't call her greedy.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything about her. What
did you say pretty? What is the word? What's something?
3D girl like you.
3D.
Girl like you doing in a place like this. Yeah. Nothing about her. So I never sold her out, never said her name. Because that feels selfish, to talk about someone on a song. It has nothing to do with them. It was just my feeling for her. And so I just wanted to dramatize and mock myself for that feeling. But also, respect that, like, real connection I felt. It was maybe one-sided, but, I just wanted to respect that, but also laugh at it.
And this very week, on the 10th anniversary of genocide in Rwanda, they're ceremoniously burying the remains of hundreds of victims left in pit latrines and mass graves.
Resurrection Morning Sermon was a part of a series of sermons I've done, and every good pastor has an Easter Day sermon, and so that's why I came up with Resurrection Morning Sermon, and I did it on Easter, and only once in Phoenix. We were on tour, and we had an 18-wheeler in front of us had flipped over, and we're therefore late to the show, and so it closed down. And so I had my pulpit, so I just set it out in the parking lot and did it for the first time. John Paul II had just died 2 days before. So I improvised it for the most part, and then I revisited it with this gel beat. So the idea was simply, there are those things that refuse to stay dead. Like Jesus. That was the joke of it. And I made it a point in my sermons to never like critique Christianity or anything like that. But I was trying to talk about recurring things. And if you're a student of U.S. imperial politics, things recur constantly. Fun fact, at the end, when we recorded it in Oakland on Brook Ave, where me and Joe lived, it was a season of cars being set on fire. Like for real, like fools would just like throw Molotovs into fucking cars and shit like that. Like I don't know why, but at the end of the song, you'll hear a horn go on and on. And then at the exact end of the song, you'll hear the horn pop. Because that's what happens when you blow up a car. The steering wheel goes into flames and pop! For me, like I feel nothing about Anticon. It was a collective. It was of a moment. Like it really meant nothing to me. It was something like a tracksuit you could take off at the end of the day. Like it was like straight up. But as a motif, I thought it was a way to talk about friends and a way to talk about youth. And these fleeting affections and failing ambitions. The first verse I had Dose, Gel, Yoni, and Brand all rapping together. And my man Matt Chang did the music for all the parts of it. And that first one I kind of wanted him to do. I was like, yo, do like a Pete Rock beat. I was kind of thinking of They Ring This Over You. That's why there's like horns throughout it. So it was melancholic while also, you know, appreciating friendship. That's why I had everyone on the song. Just in that first verse, there was like 4 or 5 people collaborating together. Like, it was meaningful. And, how do I say this? It starts out a dead man's tag on the electrical box. DJ Rob One from LA, who's a graph writer and DJ, and just a character that everyone knew and loved. When he was in Oakland, he would stay with us. And right before he passed, he had tagged where we lived in Oakland on Leicester Avenue. There was an electrical box. So every day on my way to work, walk up these stairs and you see DJ Rob Warren, his tag on the electrical box. I felt grateful to think about Rob every day when I left my house. So anyway, I say a dead man's tag on the electrical box, through which God's hand this hell of naming. I'm talking about tags, through which God's hand this hell of naming. Till its blackbird call is let from its locks, a thrown shadow of a thorn bush hanging. I'm just thinking of how like a tag looks on the corner where it looks like a thorny bush in the shadow. So anyway, till its blackbird call is let from its locks, a thrown shadow of a thorn bush hanging, to lure with its lines this volume of doubt. And here I'm referencing the riddle of Samson from the Book of Judges. Delilah was trying to trick Samson on their wedding day. And the riddle was, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. And so Samson had to figure that out. And the answer was very simple. It was a honeybee. So what I say, I rephrased it. Do the bees brew honey in the lion's head, or is one, in fact, crowned amongst the fowl, convened curbside for a bag of old bread? It's a riddle without an answer, or maybe it's just so simple that you don't need to bother to respond, you know. And then I say, this is a line I took from a book of folk tales. It was like South African folk tales. It was like a book I found on the street. Between the climbing sun and the sinking one, the world, it intervenes. That was a riddle too, but again, like, it's so simple. It's neither a question nor an answer. And I say, can it be saved? The tag, speaking of Rob Bourne, can any be saved? The tag, it asks, in a tongue so church that all sing who pass to quell a moment, the lowing lawsuits of a boneyard's throat. And that's, reference to the idea that you whistle when you walk by a graveyard in order to dispel the spirits. So the lowing just means like a low growl. It's an old term. So I was thinking lowing lawsuits of a boneyard's throat. And when the rap ceased, to which was said, you was let down at least with the golden, you was let down at least with the golden thread. Oh, let me down at least with the golden thread. And that's from an old Christian song about Mary watching Jesus be lowered into the grave. And then we move on. And this was about, just living in Oakland and hearing, living in downtown Oakland and hearing shopping carts constantly. So I went out and recorded. I ran a bunch of shopping carts up and down the street, broken sidewalks, and just to get that sound. Then I rapped about it. The spell of remembering, sung by the left rear wheel of stolen shopping carts on the shallow banks of a gravel lot, that dark brushed blot on the haunted CAT scan of a map maker's skull. I'm just thinking like how folks reimagine geography of a place through struggle, through long nights and camel scarred lungs and pushing a goddamn shopping cart that waits for us all, right? And beneath its pulse rattle, a vox humana demanding, do you rest each moment in the palm of beginning? Have you washed body and all in the blood of sirens? A cart driver, one smashed heel in either world, black tarp lined against the wind like the flattened husk of the dark that falls behind him in a city settled by a gold rush, cold running razors down his lungs' length. Then have Yoni sing just a little bit about the sound of a leaf falling on the streets of Oakland. And if you listen to the song, I waited in autumn afternoon for a leaf to fall so I could record it, so I could hear exactly what it sounds like when a dead leaf meets concrete on 13th and Madison in downtown Oakland. And then, so the verse following, and this was about me between classes after I started going to Berkeley and worked down the street from Berkeley on Telegraph at Amoeba Records. Imagine my embarrassment on Take Our Daughters to Work Day, this dollar book of selected Lorca, Lorca being a remarkable poet and playwright from Barcelona, who was murdered by the fascists. And this office of grass in Oakland, where she might, I'm thinking of an imaginary daughter, where she might watch a bum move 10 feet every 2 hours to stay sleeping in the sun because his crushed can caravan carries the night. So I was thinking, man, the soles of his feet must be sore. He's got to keep it moving all through the night so the rest of us can sleep. And will I point at the ledge of the Hotel Nash? It was a residential hotel in Berkeley. Will I point at the ledge of the Hotel Nash and say, line break in the cloud book? Or at an old man in a window and say, single drop of bottled father? Some things leave for which there is no comeback tour. Things this humble album of ours cannot hope to record, yet cannot help but record. And then the last few lines is just me wondering about the point of it all, of anticon, of any record label whatsoever. Why even bother? And is this a test press of wet flesh, or the release said from breastplate, shallow breath, billowing the shrink wrap net, blown by the aspirate at the head of the deathless? What's next? Noting my share in the subset, the Sunset Casket Outlet. Sunset Casket Outlet was a spot around the corner from me, like Merritt in Oakland. They did spray painted caskets. So in the window they had Jam Master Jay, Biggie, Tupac on the front of these caskets. Walk by it every day. So I ask aloud, is a record label not a miracle yet? With all the mortal prayer, furta sacra. It's a Latin term. It just means stolen objects from the tombs of saints. Furta sacra and forgery, you'd expect it to be get. What do you get from this? That's the question. That's the open question. It ends with the question mark.
Thank you for listening. Again, you can get bonus material, an extra 40 minutes speaking with Pedestrian at patreon.com/extraordinaryrap. You also get a whole slew of past bonus materials, including even some extra Pedestrian gems from the first time we had him on the show. Those bonuses include the unreleased Stuffed Animals album and a live video performance. You get all of that for just $3 damn. Please give us feedback. You can email extraordinaryrap@gmail.com. Better yet, leave a comment in the YouTube or the Patreon or wherever you're finding this. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, give me music recommendations. All right. Thank you.